Hey everybody, today we're going to take a look at some more political shifts. This time we've got two consecutive presidential elections, 1964 and 1968. If you want to skip ahead to the map, there will be a link down below. So first we'll put up a little bit of background about both of these elections. 1964, that was the Lyndon Johnson landslide. He got 486 electoral votes. He carried 44 states plus DC, over 61% of the popular vote. The Republican Barry Goldwater, he only got 52 electoral votes, carried 6 states, good for 38.5% of the vote. So that was a high point for the Democrats. And the next election in 1968, that was won by Richard Nixon. He got 301 electoral votes. He carried 32 states and won with a plurality of 43.4% of the popular vote. The Democrat was Hubert Humphrey. He got 191 electoral votes, carried 13 states plus DC, and he got 42.7% of the popular vote. So it was close in the popular vote, not so much in the Electoral College. Now there was also a strong third-party vote that year. George Wallace from Alabama, he did get 46 electoral votes, carried 5 states, all of them in the South, and he got 13.5% of the national popular vote. So let's take a look at the spreadsheet. We've got the states here in the first column, then we've got the 64 Democratic vote, Lyndon Johnson, the 64 Republican vote, Barry Goldwater, then we have the 68 Democratic vote, Hubert Humphrey, the 68 Republican vote, Richard Nixon. The next column are the Democratic shifts between those two elections, followed by the Republican shifts, and the last column is the net change between the two parties between the two elections. And there's also shading in this column. The darkest colors are 10 or more point shifts, the lightest colors are under 5-point shifts, and most of these are hard shifts toward the Republicans, again coming from a high point with the Democrats and following that up with a solid win for the Republicans. So let's go through these states. First in Alabama. In 1964, the electors in Alabama were unpledged, but to make it simple, we're going to say that was Lyndon Johnson, and he got 30.6% of the vote. Barry Goldwater got 69.5%. If we go ahead 4 years, George Wallace actually won the state. He was the governor there, so that means both parties' vote share dropped, mostly from the Republicans, but that ended up with Hubert Humphrey getting 18.7%. Richard Nixon, he only got 14%. That's a net loss of 11.9% for the Democrats, and a net loss of 55.5% for the Republicans, and that comes out to a total net shift of 43.6% toward the Democrats. That's kind of a misleading anomaly, but that's all the data we've got. So now we know how this works. Let's quickly go through the rest of these states, and most of these did shift toward the Republicans unless otherwise noted. So next up in Alaska, that moved toward the right by 34.4%, Arizona as well by 18.8%, Arkansas by 13.1%, California by 21.4%, Colorado 32.3%, Connecticut 30.5%, Delaware 25.7%, and Florida 11.9%. Georgia went in the other direction. That went toward the Democrats by 4.6%. Back toward the Republicans now with Hawaii at 36.5%, Idaho 27.9%, Illinois 21.9%, Indiana 24.7%, Iowa 36.2%, Kansas 29.1%, Kentucky 34.4%. Louisiana, that's another southern state that drifted back toward the Democrats by 18.3%. Maine back toward Nixon and the Republicans by 27.5%. Maryland 29.3%, Massachusetts 22.7%, Michigan 26.9%, Minnesota 15.3%. Next in Mississippi, it's another anomaly due to George Wallace in 1968, and that had probably the biggest shift we've ever seen out of every shift I've ever done, 83.7% away from the Republicans and toward the Democrats. Missouri is back in the red column by 29.3%, Montana 27.4%, Nebraska 33.2%, Nevada 25.4%, New Hampshire and even 36%, New Jersey 33.8%, New Mexico 31.1%, New York 31.8%, North Carolina 20.4%, North Dakota 33.8%, Ohio 28%, Oklahoma 27.2%, Oregon 33.8%, Pennsylvania 26.6%, and Rhode Island 29.6%. South Carolina broke with the trend again. That went back toward the Democrats by 9.3%. And the rest of these are all shifts toward the Republicans. South Dakota lurched toward the right by 22.6%, Tennessee by 20.8%, Texas 25.6%, Utah 29.2%, Vermont had the biggest Republican shift out of all the states, going a massive 41.9% toward the GOP. Virginia got redder by 18.2%, Washington by 22.5%, West Virginia 27%, Wisconsin 28%, and Wyoming by 33.5. We also have Washington, D.C. on here. That's extremely blue, but it did get redder this time by a modest 7.4. So those are all of the states and all of the shifts. And there might not be a lot to see here, but if you want to take all this data and visualize it on a map, let's take a look at that. We've got the same basic shading. The darkest colors are 10 or more point shifts. The lightest colors this time are under 5-point shifts, and there's not much mystery here. This is an extremely red map. Most of these shifted toward the Republicans by 20 or 30 points. Only in the Deep South, Louisiana through South Carolina, that's where the Democrats made their gains, and that is again because of George Wallace taking away a lot of support from Nixon and the Republicans in 1968. So everywhere you look, there's a ton of red on here. The states that did go blue, there were unique circumstances there, but all we can do is apply the data we have, and this is it. Democrats had a great year in 1964. In 1968, it was not the case, so almost all these states moved hard toward the right, and I don't think there's really many takeaways. I'm sure you could look into the individual states and pull out some more unique stats, but I think I will leave it there for now. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about any of the shifts in any of these states? Any thoughts on any of these two elections? What about the George Wallace vote in 1968? Let me know your thoughts down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.